Hello and welcome to Things I've Learned. I'm Allie and we have my co-host Ron here.
How you
And
guys doing?
today we're talking to Nicole. I want to start off first. Where are you from? What is your ethnicity, background? Tell me just like a quick overview of that.
Hey guys, so my name is Nicole Romero and I am from New Jersey and I am an editor and filmmaker. And I'm also a DACA recipient.
Awesome. And what is your background? So, your ethnicity.
Oh, I'm Peruvian.
Oh, Peruvian squad. Everybody here Peruvian.
I know.
So, if you don't mind me asking, like, so you're a video editor for like a company or small company, big company?
So I'm working for an advertising company here in Paramus, New Jersey. I want to say they're like medium size, like it's not to the point where it's like so small, like we have like account managers and then like the creative side, so it's a decent sized company, I want to say.
How'd you get that job? Like, did you just apply and did you make a resume, a portfolio? Like, what'd you do?
So actually, so I just graduated from Montclair State University back in May. And before that, I was finishing up my last 2 semesters and I was like thinking to myself, I haven't done any internships. So once I graduate, I don't know what I'm going to do. So spring 2020, my last semester, I started looking, or right before it, I started looking into internships. And Montclair has like they call it Hire a Red Hawk, and pretty much like a database of all these internships and jobs that you can, kind of just apply through our site. So I saw the posting and I remember feeling really discouraged, not because I didn't feel qualified, but because the requirements said like had to be a US citizen. And so I was like, oh my God, like I remember reading the description and feeling to myself, like, I'm so qualified for this. Like, I know I can do this. Mm-hmm. And my resume was like really great. And I was just not even going to go for it. And my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, but my boyfriend had told me, do it, send them an email. Like, you have nothing to lose. Just tell them like you're under DACA and send them your resume. So I did just that. And surprisingly, they messaged me and they were like, hey, like, we don't have a problem with you being under DACA. Like, we'd love to have you for an interview. And it was just like that. So I got scheduled in for an interview, went from there, and I got the internship. So that's kind of the start of it. Yeah.
Cool. Did you keep going with after the internship for that company to work on, hire on?
Yeah. So luckily for me, not luckily, this was like pre-COVID. So my internship started February and I was there for a month before everything got shut down with COVID. So my internship got cut short. I was only there for a month. And I remember feeling like so heartbroken because I was like, what am I going to do now? Like, my ideal plan was to do my internship, do it all the way till graduation. They were going to love me and hire me. But because it got cut short, I feel like I didn't have enough time to prove myself. But they cut the internship. And then I went the rest of the following months till like July, the end of July, kind of just floating a little bit. Like I think a lot of us did who lost our jobs. But then I was lucky enough that they really liked me and they appreciated the work that I did in my very small time there, that they offered me a freelancing position. And then that quickly, turned into a position now that I'm transitioning into being full-time. So I think that I got really lucky, but I also really worked my butt off in that month that I was there. So I got, I think I was in a really good place, luckily.
I like that. Everything came together for you.
Yeah.
Just doing. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, to me it was a little different, a little not weird, but it was like I didn't know like the jobs actually you had to be a US citizen. That was weird.
I think that the requirements, I think they didn't list it properly. I think that they just wanted someone who was able to work, like, like had a social security to work. But I don't think they really put that well in a description. And like, I think that I would have missed out on an opportunity if I had just read it for what it was and like been like, okay, well, I'm not a citizen, so I can't do it. But
Is that
yeah,
because they're maybe wanting, like maybe not wanting to sponsor someone, like for a visa or something? I'm
I'm
guessing.
not sure. I'm not sure. I mean, I think a lot of jobs, I could be wrong, but a lot of jobs, like even when you start doing the paperwork, once you get hired, it's like, will you now or in the future need
Hmm.
sponsorship or something like
Yeah.
that? But I think that they just wanted someone who would be willing, that they, because they had me on their payroll. It wasn't an unpaid internship, so I think that that was partially why.
That makes sense.
Oh, those are hard to grab. Very competitive.
Yeah, yeah.
But so you were saying like it kind of deters you from applying. So I'm assuming that are you a non-resident or U.S. citizen?
No, I'm under DACA, so right now I just have a work permit to work here in the country.
Going off that, so how can you tell me a little bit about your background? Like, what age did you come here for? From I guess from Peru to here, United States.
Yeah. So
Tell me
I came
like that.
here, yeah, I came here when I was 2 years old. Um, I think our situation was kind of like my dad was already here, and I was in Peru with my mom and my older sister. And, my dad was just like pretty much working. I think he was working like a busboy job at the time.
Mm.
And he was just all the money he got, he was sent to Peru. But, eventually it was something like our family needed to be together. And so we came over here. I came here on a visa and I grew up here. I mean, I don't remember Peru at all. Like,
Mm.
I think I'm very Americanized. Like I even have trouble speaking Spanish now. Like, and Spanish was my first language, but it just, now I sound like a gringa. Like it doesn't flow as like it used to when I was younger. But
You're in good
yeah.
company.
Yeah, good company. We've all been there. Yeah.
Yeah. I was born here, but I mean,
Yeah. I
definitely
came here when I
sound
was
like a gringa.
5. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's cool. So when you came here when you were 2, so you basically are. I think you are an American. You
Mhm.
know the culture. You know more. You know more history of United States and Peru, of course.
Yeah.
When did you actually find out? Like, at what age did you find out you were like undocumented? Like, what age?
Yeah. That's a really good question. So it's weird because as a kid, I mean, like, kids are not dumb. Like, you see what's going around, like, you see behaviors. And for me, as I was growing up, a lot of the behaviors that I noticed were like, my dad didn't want to drive after a certain hour, or we couldn't travel to far places, or sometimes, because, we always lived in apartments. So there was either someone living above us or under us. So if there were ever conversations that my parents were having, and if it got a little bit like too loud, my dad would automatically like shut it down, like shh, like
Mhm.
they're gonna hear. Like, it was a lot of this shush shush. Like, and as a kid, I was like, what are we shushing about? Like, I didn't get it.
Mhm.
Um, and so I kind of grew up with that stuff happening around me, and so I knew something was off, but I didn't really understand it. And when my dad would kind of try to talk to me about it, it was always kind of like, I don't have this. And I'd be like, the hell is this? Like, like, I don't know what that means, but I guess that was his way of saying like he didn't have documentation, he didn't have a license. But as a kid, that stuff doesn't really make sense. Then I got to high school, and it
Exactly.
was my junior year. I was 16, and this was about the time that everyone is, starting to get their learner's permits and get their first jobs. And I went to a technical high school, so at the time, our teacher was telling us that it was like pretty much like he would give us a grade for just bringing in our social security so we could sign up to co-op, right? Because they really wanted our video program kids to just sign up for co-op. And I was always a good student. So hearing that it was, it would affect my grade, I was like, oh my God, I need to bring it in. So I remember going home and being like, I need my social. And they were like, you don't have one. What do you mean I don't have one? And that's when it kind of all made sense, right? Like, all the behaviors that I saw when I was a
Mhm.
kid, like, it made sense. I was like, okay. But I don't think that even in that moment, like, I knew like, I definitely knew I couldn't bring anything in. I had nothing to bring in, and that feeling alone sucked, right? Watching my classmates bring in a social security and get this grade, it sucked. But I don't think it even really set in yet, because then, you know, my school offered the driver's ed program. So all you had to do is take the class, to give you the blue slip, you go to DMV, you can get your permit. I think that's when I started really feeling like excluded, right? Because I passed the test, or even before, right? I took it twice, because the first time I felt so discouraged, because I was like, I'm not going to be able to get it. So what's the point? Then I passed it, and I remember feeling like, okay, I can do it. And then I remember this one girl, because I wasn't open about my status when I was in high school. That was like unheard of. You know, I grew up with parents who were constantly like, shush, shush, shush.
Yeah.
You don't talk about your status. Like, even at home, it wasn't something we openly talked about. And to think to share it with anyone else, like, that was crazy. Yeah. So I remember this one girl in my junior year, she was pretty open. Like, she had made a speech in our English class about being under DACA. And as far as I was concerned, I was the only person in New Jersey who was under DACA, because I never talked to anyone about my status. So I felt like I was alone. But when I saw her go up there and do her speech, I got an interest in like talking to her and kind of like picking her brain a little bit. And she had told me she got her permit. And I was like, how'd you do that? And she was like, oh, like, our family friend like went with me. And because, you know, when you're 16, you can't sign by yourself. You need a parent or guardian. So I guess I don't know her specific situation, but I tried to go do that. And I went with my mom. And I'll never forget this. And it's funny because I don't think I've talked about the situation until like right now. But I remember the DMV lady looking at me, and like, you know, DMV people aren't the most pleasant at first, but I think when she kind of understood my situation, she lowered her voice and she was like, look, I can't help you. I really can't help you. And you can get in big trouble for having your mom here right now with you. And I was just like, I remember my eyes just swelling up, and I was just like, oh my God. Like, I felt embarrassed, and I can't even imagine how my mom felt, like having full understanding of what our situation was, and me putting my mom in that position. That was just like, that's when I really understood. I was like, wow. So what do I do? What do I do? I can't drive. I can't go to work. And I think that's when the heaviness of like, what am I going to do after high school really, really set in. But I try not to tell myself like I got lucky, but for me, I was a junior in high school right when they put DACA into place. So I got my EAD, my employment authorization card, February of that year. So a lot of that heaviness that I felt for the first chunk of my junior year, it ultimately vanished once I got that, because then I knew, okay, there's hope for me. And that's kind of that was like kind of like my start and how I came to understand what my situation was, you know?
It's like a lot, I think, to put on. I mean, a lot of emotions, I think, to put on you. Yeah, on someone so young, like processing through that. And I mean, the like big experiences, like figuring out like really adult things you're like having to figure out. That's a really amazing story. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you about that. Yeah. So when did DACA come on? 2012, I believe.
Yeah, 2012. Yeah.
Yeah, and because I know there are limitations to DACA as well, especially going to school, when tuition wise. When you were about to graduate high school and apply to colleges, was that one of the things people told you about, or you had to find out yourself, like, hey, I can't apply for financial aid?
I think I think it also, it's the timing, right? I think when I was in high school, it's a lot different than how, you know, kids who are now in high school had to deal with. But when I was in high school and they had just, you know, put DACA into place, I don't think a lot of the counselors and advisors that I had around me knew what my situation was or what they could do to help me. So everything after high school was me figuring it out by myself, because I was going to be the first person in my family to go to college. My parents, you know, spoke very broken English and had no idea what they could help me with. So that was kind of me figuring it out. But I had applied to college and I had gotten into Montclair. and I was going to go in right after. But I don't think that like I said, I hadn't really had a reality check of what pricing and tuition would be like, because I didn't really have the right advisement. So I remember going away for the summer. At the time I worked at a camp. I was a camp counselor. I came back after that session and I saw the tuition bill and I was like, I can't pay for this. Like, my parents can't pay for this. But I didn't, luckily for me, like, New Jersey had put in place, like, that I could pay in-state tuition. I just had to fill out, like, an affidavit stating that the moment I could adjust my status, I would. So I think being in New Jersey has its perks, because I didn't have to deal with that. Every year I, signed up or, was going to pay tuition, I just had to submit that affidavit and get it notarized. So I was exempt from that. I know a lot of other states and people in other states have to pay out-of-state tuition, which is rough. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's one of the things, because I have people that are undocumented, my friends that are undocumented as well. And when I was graduating high school, they were going through some stuff like, hey, I can't join the military. I can't pay for college. It's too expensive. And the out-of-state tuition is just incredibly ridiculous. Like, and to pay out of pocket with no financial aid either. I'm like, where you can get that money?
Yeah.
So,
That was the financial aid too. Like, I know I couldn't do that. So I had mentioned that I got into the school I was going to go to. I was going to go right into university right after high school. And, seeing that, the tuition bill and being like, okay, well, I don't get financial aid. Like, I can't pay for this. I dropped out and I went to community college. So I did my first 2 years. I mean, it took me about almost 3 years to finish my associates, but I did it. I went to community college and that was paid out of pocket. Like, my parents helped me. So that's kind of how we did it for a long time until 2000, and I want to say it was 2018. Governor Phil Murphy in New Jersey passed the bill for undocumented students to be able to have financial aid. So for my last semester, I was covered. I was covered by financial aid. So yeah.
I never heard of that. Wow, that's
it was a really great victory in New Jersey. Like, for us, like, dreamers and undocumented people, like, to just be able to have financial aid. Like, wow, it was. I'll never forget it. Like, it took so much pressure off each semester.
Was there some stipulations you had to do after you graduated college, providing in-state tuition, or not really? It's just for, if you were to drop college, does it go to out-of-state tuition, or the interest rate's high, or it's just regular normal tuition?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I didn't take out any loans or anything. So everything I paid was from our own pocket. So I didn't have to deal with anything like that. Yeah.
Did you do that for the 4-year college as well?
Well, so I did my 2 years. Yeah, I did. Everything was paid out of pocket. Like, I mean, financial aid did cover a good amount, like half of it. But no, I didn't have to pay anything back afterwards. So yeah. So what people here do, I believe when you do if you're a citizen and you do financial aid, I think you go through a different, I'm not even sure what it's called, but for me, I had to fill out something called the HISA. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't, and I think through that.
FAFSA.
Yeah. Instead of the FAFSA, yeah. So I did the HISA, but I think it ultimately works the same way. But I didn't have to pay anything back afterwards. So, yeah.
Dude, congratulations. That honestly, even with that kind of stuff you're going through, to pay everything just out of pocket, so smart, so good.
Yeah.
I have student loans.
Same.
I know Ali has student loans, and the interest rate is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
luckily my parents were able to help me with it. And I think for a long time, when I first got out of high school, I was like, I want to finish in 4 years. And I remember my aunt sat me down and had a conversation with me. And she was like, listen, it doesn't matter how long it takes you to finish, as long as you finish. And she, gave me her life story. And it took me 8 years to get my bachelor's, but I have my bachelor's. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay. And that was the right push I needed, and I'm very thankful for it, because that was something that my dad instilled in me. It was like, you're not taking out loans. We're not doing that. I don't care. We'll pay for it. but we're not doing that. So I was like, okay. And I'm very, very thankful that I listened to my dad.
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
that's really, really smart.
Yeah, I wish I listened to that when I was a kid. But then, I'm the first person as well from my family to graduate college,
Mm.
and I had no idea what FAFSA is, financial aid. Even though I am now a citizen, I still didn't know like the process, college process, or anything to do. Like how to apply. And senior year, I took the SATs. Like why? Like I don't know, stuff like that. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna make myself sound old, but like I think the internet was still kind of new. I think
Yeah, it was.
at that time, so there wasn't as much information as there is now.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And
it was harder, I think, to find that information.
right, and just there's so many. Well, like Google didn't work the way it does now. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I mean, my my extended family went to college, but like in Peru. So like even then, I'm like I was the first person in my immediate family that went to college here. So like, it was
It's
definitely.
figuring it out by yourself. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's so rough. Like when you're the person who you don't have anyone to ask, and
Mm-hmm.
even worse in your situation when the internet was just starting out and Google didn't work the way it used to. Like, damn.
Yeah.
Props to you guys though.
YouTube was just starting. That's how old I
That's true.
am. There was no social media back then.
Mm-hmm. It was
Yeah.
just Facebook, MySpace.
But yeah, so you graduated college, you got the job, your first job. What led you to, I know we shared a little bit about what you've done off camera. So I want to tell the viewers what you've done. You done a documentary that I think Ali's seen it. I've seen it. And it was just about like a mini documentary about people that are undocumented and about the have DACA. So can you tell a little bit more about that interview, and then as well you have a film you did, independent film. I'd like to talk more about as well.
Yeah. So the documentary I did was called Documented, and at the time before this film and before filming everything, I wasn't open about my status. I didn't tell people I was undocumented. It was something that I kind of carried like a big burden for so many years, as a kid into my teenagehood and then into the beginning of my adulthood. It was something I just never talked about. And September 5th, 2017 is when Trump terminated DACA. And so my life I was just starting university. I had just transferred in from community college, and it felt like I was getting my start, right? And immediately it felt like everything was crashing down. So when this happened, I had a friend at the time. His name is Juan Escalante. He was working for a blog spot for immigrant like news and stuff called America's Voice, and they at the time were organizing these like dinner parties where they were contacting people from different states and wanting them to kind of host their own dinner parties, get people together to make calls to their representatives, and urging them to fight for DACA. But I ran from that email. I ran from it for weeks until one day he finally like texted me, and he was just like, "Hey, like, do you have time to talk?" And I was like, "Yeah, but no." Like, so we got on a call and he explained it to me, and he told me, "I think you're at a really great advantage because you are a creative person." He's like, "You don't need to talk about your status. All you need to do is kind of organize it." Like, he gave me an example. He told me one of the states were cutting out butterflies and sending them like the monarch butterfly, and sending them to their representatives and having people sign them. And that was what that state was doing for their project. And so me being the person that I was like, "Okay, can I do a documentary?" And he was like, "You can do anything you want." And I was like, "Okay." So the filmmaker in me was like, "Okay, so what do I do it on?" And I was like, "Okay, so what I can do is I can host an event, I can invite people, I can advertise it on social media, and I'll record the process, the making of this event." And so as we were organizing the actual event, the problem I was encountering was like, I need an actual DACA recipient to talk about why this affects them, why this program is important, and why we need to fight for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't find anyone to do that because not everyone is comfortable with talking about their status.
Yeah.
I wasn't comfortable with talking about my status. So that was a hard decision for me to make, and I sat through it for a while, and I thought, okay, if this is going to work, if I'm going to make people care about this, then I need to show them a person who has feelings, who just wants to work, who just wants to go to school. And I was like, okay, here's the human connection. I'm going to get in front of the camera. I'm going to talk about my status. And that's what I did. I planned the event, and I had local representatives. I had people from like nonprofit organizations kind of talk and talk about why we needed to protect DACA. And then at the end of it, I went up and I shared my story, and we recorded everything, and I made a documentary about it. I didn't really think anything of it at the time. For me, it was just like, okay, I told my friend Juan, I'm going to participate in this, and this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to deliver. So I did that, and I submitted it to a film festival, and it won the grand prize, and then it won another prize, and it got a lot of attention that I never in a million years imagined, because let's be real, like I never thought anyone was going to care about my story. Like I was just like anyone else. But a lot of people cared, and I kind of made a following for myself because I was open about it. Then I had people messaging me who I went to school with, who I went to like elementary school with, high school with, and they were like, hey, thank you so much for sharing your story. Like, you don't know what it means. I'm undocumented myself. Like, I've struggled with it. And I was just like, oh, like that was never the intent.
Mm-hmm.
But because all of that happened, and because of Documented, it opened that door for me, right? To be able to publicly speak out and be comfortable, because then I realized, like, okay, if I grew up feeling alone and alienated and feeling like no one understood what I was feeling, and in reality, there were a lot of people who understood what I was feeling, but they also were not talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Then this is what I needed to do. Then I found my calling for a while. You know, I found it, and I decided, okay, this is what I want. This is what I want to do. This is my purpose, and I continued to do it. And then I very quickly realized how depressing it is to keep up with politics, and especially when your program is on the line.
Yeah.
I fell into a deep depression because I was looking at the news every day, and I was hoping something was going to change with DACA, and nothing was changing ever. And I was like, what's the point? Why am I paying for school out of pocket?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I still fighting if no one cares?
Mm-hmm.
And for a while, I just kind of stayed away from it. And I truly believe that when you're meant to do something, when God gives you a gift, or, you know, people see a potential in you, you're going to keep getting reeled in. So I continued to get reeled in, and I got involved with Make the Road New Jersey, which is an immigrant and workers' rights organization here, and they're nonprofit. They're great. I did their leadership school, and I started to really spend time with the community. And because, you know, I knew what I had around me. I knew what I had around my circle, my home life, right? I knew what my family was going through. But then there was like a point where I was like, okay, now it's time to leave this bubble and look at my community, look at my community's needs. So that's what I started to do. And it was really eye-opening and humbling. And then, you know, later on, that kind of led me to wanting to make more films centered around immigration or DACA or whatever it was, right? That I felt like my community needed to hear, what my community needed to see. And so my junior year of Montclair State, I was in the filmmaking program. So the way it works is one semester you write a script, the next semester you shoot it. So I was taking a screenwriting class, and I was writing my script, and I was thinking about, okay, what am I going to write about? Like, I knew I wanted to write about something centered in my life, something that I had experienced, something that I felt like people needed to hear. But immigration is such a big topic. For a 10-minute film, it just felt like way too much, right, for people to kind of download. Yeah. So I remember my screenwriting teacher at the time, and I'll never forget this advice, because the best advice I ever heard when it came to screenwriting. But it was just like, you have to write what you know. So he told me, because I knew I wanted to write about a young girl. So he was like, what's something that you really wanted to do when you were 13 years old or 12 years old? And I was like, I really wanted to walk home by myself. And he was like, okay, and why couldn't you? And I was like, because my parents were paranoid that people would think we were left alone. And if people thought we were alone, they would call the cops. And if the cops came, maybe they'd separate us and then they'd find her. And it kind of went into that. And he was like, then write about that. He was like, write about that, because I've never heard that be put into words like that. Like, you know, something as simple as walking home from school. That was something that you longed for at 12 years old. And I was like, yeah, I did. So I wrote a script about a 13-year-old girl. Her name is Mia. And she's growing up with undocumented parents. And all Mia wants is to walk home with the cool girls at school. But unfortunately for her and a lot of other kids, there's ICE raids going on in her neighborhood. And that creates, you know, the paranoia in her parents. And I felt like eventually the story kind of tied into what it was like, the anxiety growing up undocumented, and also trying to balance that with just wanting to be a normal kid and fitting in. So thus my film A Real Job was born. And I wrote the script, and I worked the rest of the summer was used to kind of plan and budget everything that was going on. What a lot of people don't tell you when you go to film school is that you need money to make films. So, and I didn't have money. So I put it all on my credit card, and I eventually paid all my credit card off, but I funded for my film, and I had a lot of people who were really invested in the story who helped me out with it. But we shot it. The film was finished being edited this summer, actually, and it is now been submitted to about 23 film festivals in New Jersey, New York, Florida, California. So we're like waiting on a lot of responses, but so far it's gotten into the LA Latinx Film Festival in California, and it made the semi-finalist in the Dumbo Film Festival in New York. So that's where we're at right now.
Insane.
Yeah.
I want to see it.
So yeah, same. That takes so much dedication and so much hard work. I'm assuming. I can't believe you self-funded that, because I mean, I would have assumed like, oh, like you have to do a fundraiser or something, or like I guess I didn't know the financials behind that. So that's insane.
I mean, I think that a lot of people do. A lot of people do fundraise for it, but at the time, I don't know. I think my biggest issue as an artist is always thinking like no one's gonna care about my project or what I have to say. Yeah. So I kind of take that and I just kind of drive myself, and I'm like, I can do it. I can do everything. I'll do it. And you know, luckily I was able to, but most people do fundraise. I ended up having to fundraise afterwards. After the film was finished, I did a GoFundMe, and it was for funds to take it to festivals, because submitting to festivals gets pretty expensive. Like submission fees like range from like $10 all the way to $80, you know, and that's like something that's like not promised if you're going to get in, and it's non-refundable. So it got a lot of support. The GoFundMe, when I made the GoFundMe, the goal was like 700, and then I put it up, and we went past our goal. We made it to like 1,000 something in like 2 days. Because, you know, like I said, the following from Documented, everyone was like, yeah, like, you know, and like you put like the synopsis of what it's about. And I think it was because of Documented and me just being like authentic and just honest about who I was. People like that, and people just became very invested in my journey and what I decided to do with, you know, being a DACA recipient and a filmmaker. So a lot of those people were a lot of the people who were like, okay, I'm going to fund for this. And they all donated. So
amazing.
It's awesome to have so much support.
Yeah.
As well. Yeah, that sounds great. When do you think people will be able to see the actual film?
So this is like a rough estimate, but I don't think until like next year, just because festivals are super like annoying about it, but they're just like, if it's on the internet, you're disqualified. So I'm going to have to wait till it makes its last rounds. I think the last notification date that I'm waiting on is July 26th of 2021. Oh. That's not even like, you know, so I think festivals are probably going to run, even beyond that. But roughly, I think next year it will be on Vimeo or YouTube.
Okay. And do you have your own channel like for that film, or do you have a personal channel? Like, where's that link to?
So right now we have an Instagram, and you can follow us at A Real Job Film. And there I post like behind the scenes, and I post like updates on the film, like if we get in, and just like kind of delving into like I believe it's called like transmedia, like just like beyond the script, beyond the film, like so people who are following just get a little bit more. Yeah.
And this is all like side work you're doing is besides your job or your main job, right?
Yeah, this is more just like I guess a passion project. Like at first it was something I wrote for school, and then I shot for school, and I could have left it there, but I didn't. I continued to work on it because I knew it had potential. I knew the story was important, and something that you know, I'm like a white Latina, but something that I really realized while I was working with the community and as I was growing up, I grew up watching Disney Channel, and I never saw anyone who looked like me on the Disney Channel, or people's families who look like my family and were struggling with the things we were struggling with. So it kind of goes back to being the first person to go to college, right? Like, who do you look up to? Whose plan do you follow? But when you're a kid and you're watching movies and TV and no one looks like you, you're kind of thinking like, okay, I'm by myself. Like, no one understands me. And so something I really kept in mind was like, yeah, I was a white Latina. It was written by a white Latina. And I can't say I've ever felt like discriminated because of the color of my skin. Like, I don't think so, but my parents are darker than me. So I knew that when I was casting for the film, the lead needed to be a brown little girl. She needed to be someone who my community needed to see. Like, that's what we needed. And that's what I felt like my community's needs were a lot higher than, more important than what my life looked like. So that was something that I did. And so that was more of a passion project for me. Cause I have my job that, pays for my life right now, but just been finishing up this film for the last year has just been something that has been like just driven by like my heart and my soul, and just my need for like wanting people to feel accepted and like they're not alone. And I can just imagine if that's how I was feeling as a young kid, like what are kids these days feeling, because we're living in such a negative time, I want to say,
and like a really high political climate. So like, yeah, that's awesome that I think we're able to see that distinction too, because I think similar, like I'm pretty fair too. And so, but so my experiences are obviously a little bit different than within the community. So that's, I loved that.
Yeah, I actually am more excited, no offense, but I'm more excited to see the actual film itself. Like, you're hyping this up, I just want to see it now. Like, it's a good film to watch.
Thank you. Yes.
But yeah, with the climate, everything going on and changing, I mean, I think what you're doing is amazing, because I think growing up, especially with me and Ali, I think we didn't have social media like that. We didn't have voices out there. We had nobody speaking out for us. I remember going to this is before DACA. My friend, I was going with my friend to a meeting for people that were undocumented going to college and proposing for the DREAM Act. Before it was actually called DACA, people called it the DREAM Act. And they wanted President Obama to push for it. And I think it was around 2010, I think this would happen. Yeah. And so when the DREAM Act or DACA happened, I was really happy for my friends now they have the opportunity to do what they want to do. So yeah, it's great to see that you're making this film out of it. And I honestly I like films like this, because I've seen other films about, undocumented people or people with struggles that are Latino, and there's not really a lot of them. Yeah,
I think back then, it's growing up, that was the hardest part. I think when I was in high school, I started writing about my feelings on Tumblr, and it was through Tumblr that I met my friend Juan Escalante, and he when I realized oh shit, there's other people under DACA, that was the gateway. I was like, whoa, because there weren't and no one talked about it, and so I feel now, because it is such like a hot topic now, like immigration, a lot more people are kind of geared towards making these things, which is great because I think a lot of people need their voices heard, and um, it doesn't feel as isolating as it did when I was a kid, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm excited for the film.
No, right? Well, next year I'm gonna wait. I'm like, yo, where's
Yeah,
the
I
film?
know. I'm
I'm
like,
gonna bug you. I'm gonna be like, hey.
yeah. When is it?
Keep up with our Instagram, you'll see.
Yeah.
What does your family say about this? Like all this stuff that you're bringing about, like, your story, you know?
I think I don't know. I feel like part of them is like I feel like part of them is like proud, and then the other is probably like horrified that I'm just like I'm gonna document it, and like this is how I grew up, and because
Yeah.
it's kind of like unheard of for them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in their own ways, like they are very, very proud of me. My parents have seen like previews, like small little clips of the film, like when I was editing and stuff. And there's this one part in the film that I'm sure when you guys see it, whenever that is, you'll recall the conversation we had about my dad shushing me and telling me there's someone upstairs or someone downstairs. Like, there's a part in the film where I actually have the dad like shush the daughter and tell her like, the neighbors will hear you. And I showed my mom that part, and she was like, let me guess, your father? And I was like, yes, my father. So it's like, I think for them, it's like weird seeing like things that were actually in our life be portrayed in a film. But I think nonetheless, they're very happy and proud. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Peruvian parents. Like, your parents like super Peruvian, or like they're like more Americanized now since being here for a while?
I think they're more Americanized now for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like also just like the Latin culture in general, it's like very private.
Yeah.
So like, I'd imagine it. I think because I could see like both sides. Obviously, they're really proud, but they're also like, we're just really private.
Yeah. I don't even think I've had like a conversation with them about like, how do you feel about me, doing this? But like when we went to go see Documented at the film festival, like they were so proud, like they were very happy. And I think the best stuff that I've heard was like my mom telling me that she's proud of me for not being afraid and for always being brave and proud of who I am, and what status I'm under, like doesn't matter, and it doesn't define me. I think that's probably the best part of this whole journey, I think, was, hearing my parents like not feel shameful, because I think a lot of us who grow up undocumented or have undocumented family, like there's this shame that we all carry about not having papers or whatever. But when she said that, I was like, I didn't feel any of that shame. I really felt like she was proud of me, and that they were proud of who we are in our family.
Thank you for sharing all that. I don't know if Ella, do you have any more questions to ask her?
I think that is.
Yeah. Great story. I really liked it.
I'm very inspired by your story. I think it'll definitely be something that is going to be good for the Latin community. So I'm excited.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it motivates me more to do these kind of stuff, like interviewing people as well. Like just like you said, to give a voice to somebody else, or like somebody can listen, like, hey, this same thing happened to me, like I can do this thing, whatever. So thank you again for being on this, telling your story. I'll have all the your movie description in the mini documentary as well in the link down below. Was there any last words you want to say to everybody here listening?
Yeah. Whatever it is you're doing today and every day, keep going, keep pushing. It doesn't matter what your status is. And if you're first generation, like you can do it. You can do anything. Just keep going. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you for that. Well, guys, we're making a video every day. We're interviewing people. So make sure to like, subscribe, share these videos to other people, and make sure to follow us on Things I've Learned. And make sure to check out our Instagram, things_I've learned. And yeah, great. See you. Bye, guys.
Bye.